stuff. So this is my Varden sleeve wall, and I'm going to do strawberries and cherry tomatoes. And I've got these up here. I think we've got some other video that shows me mounting the wire, but I've got the irrigation tubing on, and I'm just going to cut pieces and leave them stubbed at the end, and then I'll figure out how I want to connect it to the supply in a minute. And let's see, you can see how I do that, because this works a little different than the trays. We've got receptors here. You might want to come on in and check it out. We've got little receptors here that hold it, and you see we put one emitter right there in the center. Just go right on across with it. So on the tray we water from the bottom, with the sleeve we water from the top, and we just kind of center it so we've got an emitter over each one and a trash truck. On the end here, I'm going to take my first emitter and center it, and then I snap these in. And then I just go all the way across. And for the most part, the emitter stays centered, although these trays have a little bit of movement, so I can move them to keep it centered. These are some nice little strawberries. I enjoy them. So, see, I've got it centered, and I can move these just a tad to keep the emitter centered on there. I'm just cutting off with plenty of excess here on the end. You might look, all of our mounting hardware, in this case our cleats, these are the cleats for the sleeve, which are really long, but they all have a hole in them. And the reason we put the hole there is so if you want to put a zip tie on it and make sure that nothing ever lifts this up and out, even though once you have weight on it, gravity's doing the job, it's just a little extra insurance. And I put the zip ties on these. So I come back in here and do the same thing, same operation. We use these sleeves with heuchera and strawberries and sedum on the set of Netflix's Instant Dream Home. So if you want to look at episode 2 or episode 6, I think it's episode 6 that's got all this, you can see us along with Farmer Nick installing all these on the set of that show, which came out beautiful. Let's see, I get all these little guys centered. And one thing everybody needs to note is that these emitters are on 6-inch centers, but they're not perfect. So you sort of have to make some adjustments to make sure they're in the right spot where you need them. Good. I've got the supply line, and I put a cap on here on the top side, and this has got a screw top, so you could put a hose on there for whatever reason. I use it for a clean out at the end of the season, and you can blow all the water out, but it makes a nice cap. And it's going on the high side, and I want to size up how close I need to get this to put the connectors on and then punch into the side of this. So I think I can cut just inside this emitter on all these, and then I can connect them, and I'll show you that. Let's see. Having a nice tubing cutter is very handy. You can pick these up at your local irrigation supply house. Who knows, we might even sell them one day. And I think you can get some at Lowe's, Home Depot, Walmart. Sometimes it's hit or miss. Okay, so now I'm going to check this again and make sure I'm all right with my emitters. Okay, this is a bag of our little connectors. See these little guys, they're barbed and they're the same on both sides. We use them to connect, we use them to punch into the supply line. We pretty much a jack of all trade fitting. And I put a little spit on there. I don't know if everybody wants to do that, but you can do that and they go in there pretty easy. And then I'll show you how we make the connection to the supply line then. Okay, that's good. And then I'm gonna show people how we put the cap on the other end. You got it. These are the end plugs. They call them goof plugs. And you can find lots of different plugs at irrigation supply houses. But this is what we supply with our Varden kit. So in this case, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to cut these off. And I'm going to leave myself a little extra room so that if I wanted to pull the irrigation one way or the other, I can. And then I'll show you how. Sort of the same procedure. These have a little barb on them, and you wet it, and then you stick the little barb in there, and that is sufficient to close that off. And we'll do it all the way down. As long as I can do this without the carpenter bee getting me or spilling all these on the ground. That'll make the outtakes real, Jack. And by the way, my cameraman today is my friend Jack. He's an experienced living wall camera guy. All right, there we go. So all this irrigation line comes on round rolls, and there's a lot of memory in it. And you're fortunate if you're doing this on a fairly warm day because you can get the memory out and it's not as hard to work with. So for me, I'm going to size this up. I'd like to have at least that much sticking up above. And I see where the line comes across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a pilot hole in right there. And this is a scratch-all that's for machine shops, but it's really handy and indestructible. And all you really need to do is punch a pilot hole in there. So again, I kind of wet this, line it up, and it makes an audible pop when it goes in. So now what I'll do is I will zip tie that when I'm done up here, and I'll mark all these holes and I'll punch pilot holes all the way down, and then I'll zip tie it to the wire. UV stabilized zip ties, 8-inch. We provide these with all of our kits as well. And you can go out and get them anywhere, but all I'm going to do here is I'm going to tie the drip line to the wire structure. So it's got a little friction. I don't need to get crazy with it. Let's see here. It just holds it in position so it doesn't move on you. Make sure I got all of them in place. And you don't have to do all of them either, by the way. Just enough to keep it in one spot. There we go. I like having a little bit of extra room because then it enables you to bend this and be a little flexible with your supply tubing as I come around to join some of these other vertical gardens I'm putting on the side of the garage. How's that look? Okay. Just kind of keep them all centered up. Those zip ties give me enough friction to keep everything in place. Okay, that's great. And if I wanted to add another row down here, I actually could. Wouldn't be any problem. I could run irrigation right off here. You don't have to have the lower wire for it to hang against. It'll still hang just fine, but I'm going to leave it because I'm going to put some pots down here to catch the drips, and I'll have some other flowering plants down here so I can bring in the pollinators and such for all this. All right, what I'm going to do is these guys need to be watered anyway. Oh, I'm just going to put a hose end on here so I can connect it to a hose and water it real quick and make sure that the irrigation works really well. And then I'm going to tie this into the rest of the side irrigation, so I'll cut this fitting back off when I'm ready to tie that in. Right on. So you missed the outtakes reel on this, but that's how I got all wet messing with the hose. So if it's too cold to get wet, don't do it. Okay, I'm going to turn this on. We'll see how it works with a flexible hose. I don't know if this is going to work or not. hopefully it'll, once the hose fills up and gets done stretching, hopefully it'll do its thing. Look at that. Yeah, I'll have to cut back a little bit of that paper. And by the way, this is kind of unusual. I'm using these paper Elipots. And this paper has got a 12-month duration. And it's perfect for having precise media that's made just for these sleeves. There we go. So you see how we're going to be able to drip right in there. And it'll soak through this whole thing nicely. There we go. Sometimes it takes a little tuning. I don't know why that one is dripping out of one side and not the other. We'll figure that out in a minute. We'll get it. There we go. It's always good to check your irrigation, make sure everything's working right before you get going with your plants. So in this particular case, I might have to mess around with these drippers a little bit. Some of these Elipots are a little taller than others too, which makes it a little more difficult. Okay, so out of all of them, this is the only one here that's causing me any grief. Okay. One thing people don't realize about this drip line is you can spin it. So if I wanted to, it only comes out of one side and I shift it to the other side, it works pretty good. Okay. All right. And then this will be on a timer, and everything will water at the same time early in the morning every day for the rest of the garden season. Get my other pot down here. Okay, I like it.